When I first joined OM back in 1988, I was part of the trekking team in Nepal. So we went out from village to village, bringing the good news, the gospel message to the people of Nepal. Before I went out on the trek, there were 2 other OMers who were imprisoned because it's against the law to try to convert people to share the gospel in Nepal. So we had 2 OMers who were in prison in eastern Nepal. So I went out on a trek, and I was actually arrested also, along with 2 other guys. It was a very difficult time. So the pressure was on. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew the 2 guys in eastern Nepal were facing a potential 6 years in prison. So to make a long story short, I was brought to the capital, to Kathmandu, where I faced the chief immigration officer of the country. I was in his office and he started grilling me with questions. And I remembered back to the verse in Matthew which says, "But when they arrest you, don't worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time you'll be given what to say. For it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you." Now I think it's really interesting, when Jesus sent his people out, he gave those words of advice. And he didn't say if you were arrested, he said, but when they arrest you. So it was a very intimidating situation that I was in. But as I was asked the questions, the Holy Spirit gave me all the answers. The answers came quick off my tongue. I was able to answer everything without implicating myself or other team members. It was a great experience in a lot of ways. It was very nerve-wracking, but God certainly was in control and saw me through it.
In 2004, Tom and I went to Sri Lanka because we were teaching over there. And at Christmas we went to a beach resort that was called Unawatuna, and we stayed in a guest house. The guest house was quite close to the beach. We woke up on Boxing Day and we went out and we sat out on the terrace of the guest house to have breakfast, and we said good morning to the lady. And then all of a sudden we heard a lot of screaming and shouting. We looked, and there was quite a narrow road that ran along the side of the guest house from the beach, and people were running along the road screaming, and we kind of then saw some water that was coming. So we stood up and wondered what we should do, and I said, come on, let's run with all the people. And Tom said, no, this way. And Tom got my hand and we ran through the guest house, and he said we need to get up high. Water was coming towards us, so we didn't, wondered what to do. And then suddenly this teenage lad who lived at the house appeared, and he helped me up. Someone kind of pulled me up, and this lad helped me up, and I managed to get on top of this shed. And we were kind of stood on top of the shed, and Tom said, we need to get higher still. So, because the water by this point had come quite high up. So we went around to the side of the house, and we stood on the roof of the house. It was only a 1-storey house. We stood on the roof at the side, but there was a roof at the front that was even higher. So Tom said, right, let's go round to the front. So we went from the side around to the front of the house, and we just looked, and there was just water everywhere basically. The water was really high up. Along the road was, tuk-tuks and cars and people all kind of coming up, and rather than it being like still water, it was all moving, this water, and there were children holding on to the tops of trees and things. And we just stood on top of this roof, and we just kind of, it was really strange. And we just stood there and prayed, and we just asked God to help us and to help all the people that were around us. The roof where we had been stood then collapsed, So it was, you know, a really good job that we've moved to this roof at the front. And I just said to Tom, what if it keeps coming up, this water? And he said, oh no, look, it has started to go down. But because the house was quite unstable, we were quite aware that we needed to get off this roof and get to higher ground where we were safe. So then suddenly a man came along with this like lilo in the water, and the water had stopped moving at this point. It was still quite high, but it was all quite still. So the man came to us on like a blow-up lilo, and we got on top of it, and we managed to swim in the water, and we got somewhere that was much higher where we were safe. And it was only kind of reflecting afterwards, even though we felt God's peace, when we stood on this roof, despite all the carnage that was going on around, we still felt God's peace. It was only afterwards that we kind of put it all together, and we saw how much God had helped us. You know, God sent this lad along to help me get onto the roof. God made sure that we weren't on the roof that collapsed, we were on the roof that was safe. And then God sent this man to come and get us to higher ground where we were safe. So afterwards, when we look back on it, you know, it was a really, you know, it's something that we'll never forget. But we also know that God was with us and that he helped us. And we know that God sent those people to save us, really. So yeah, it's something we'll never forget about, and it's something that we know that God saved us for a purpose. And whatever tight spots we're in, from now on, you know, I'm sure it won't be as dangerous as that one, but we know that God will always get us through it.